All right, boys and girls, UFC London, we're getting Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. And the most important thing before we get into these breakdowns, that this card is going to start at 10 a.m. for the prelims on the West Coast. If you live in the Midwest like me and you're in the Central Time Zone, the prelims start at noon. And on the East Coast, the prelims are starting at 1 p.m. So I looked up at this card, man. Top to bottom, we got some really good matchmaking. We're going to see some up-and-coming prospects. We're going to see some guys who have been around forever, guys I could see retiring after some of these fights. And before we get into the breakdowns, too, I got to brag on myself. Last week, we absolutely smoked that Apex card, going up 7.33 units. I'm just going to run through the plays that I gave out because I gave out 6 bets on the entire card. 5 of them hit, and the one we didn't hit I thought was an absolute robbery from the books. But we started off with Priscilla Cachoeira, plus 158 for a unit. That cashes easily. We hit Vallejos and Choi does not start round 3 at minus 155 for 3 units. Easy first round finish. Vera Musasa doesn't start round 3 for 2.4 units. Blackshear Gibson ends inside the distance at plus 120 for 1.5 units. We hit Roman Dolidze plus 130 for 1.5 units. And the bet I get screwed on is I had the spread on Kurt Holleball. Holleball plus 3.5. All he had to do was lose that fight 29-28 on all the scorecards. It would have been a clean sweep, up a ton of money. But one judge thought that was a 30-27. So what can you do? I mean, I thought Hernandez definitely had a great case to win the fight. I mean, he used his wrestling when he needed to. I thought Holleball edged it out. I thought Holleball definitely won at least one round, but the judges screw me. They didn't see it that way. I can't complain. We were up, like I said, 7.33 units. If you want to get all of my plays this weekend for free, go to winnable.com/HOFpicks and use code London, and you're going to get a 5-day free trial. See all my bets. See all the Hayjive picks bets. Hayjive is up like 20 units in the last 2 or 3 cards. He's on an absolute heater right now. I'm heating up 10 units on the year. So yeah, man, things are looking really good right now. I'm seeing the board good. Let's get into these breakdowns and hopefully keep the money train rolling into UFC London. All right, first fight on this card, we're actually getting Guram Kudatiladze coming back. You know, he's kind of had a roller coaster of a UFC career so far, and he's getting Kaue Fernandez. Now, Kaue Fernandez, if you remember, came into the UFC and immediately kind of got thrown to, a tough debut fight against Mark Jacasey. Not that Mark Jacasey's a dangerous fighter, not that he's got a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game or anything, but if you have wrestling deficiencies, he's going to take you down, he's going to plant you on your back, and it's going to be hard to get up. It's exactly what happened in that fight. Jacasey gets a split decision, and then he comes out and absolutely obliterates Muhammad Yahya, who is maybe one of the lesser UFC fighters on the roster, on the whole entire roster. But for Guram, man, Guram is a guy I think is extremely talented. This guy's striking. He does hold a little bit of power. He's pretty slick with his striking as well. And when the going gets tough, he has that knack to get fights to the ground, where ultimately I think that's where his base is. That's where he's going to want fights. He's very strong in the clinch. He's good with the trips. He's good with the takedowns. And his jiu-jitsu is not bad either, even though, he's more of a position over submission type of fighter. So against Kaue, man, if it stays on the feet, I think Guram is competitive. Where I worry is that Kaue does have good power on the feet. He throws great kicks. He can slow guys down, and we've seen Guram hurt to the body. We've seen Guram kind of worn down in fights, and then he eats big shots late, and he can't quite recover like we saw against Elvis Brenner. So for me, I think Guram is going to be able to get the wrestling going here. I think he's going to be that much better than Kaue in that department. But, if he doesn't, and Kaue's just been working on his takedown defense since that Jacasey fight, and all of a sudden, has phenomenal takedown defense, I think this could get sketchy for Guram down the stretch, because Kaue is a guy, you can see it in the fights. He might not have, the greatest cardio in the world. Not that his cardio is bad, but he's willing to fight you for all 15 minutes. Like if this is a minute or 2 left in the last round and it's a dead even fight, I think Kaue probably throws it out on the table a little bit more than Guram here. But I do think the takedowns are going to be the difference. I actually think that Guram can pull off a submission here. I think Kaue takes chances to, he'll try to throw up his own triangles from the bottom and arm bars. And I think if he turns his back a little bit, I think Guram can advance position, get into side mount, into mount, and, look for submissions and ground and pound of his own. So kind of like this fight to end inside the distance. I see a lot of people taking Kaue as a dog because of that power and danger factor. But I do think Guram is a little more technically sound. I think he's got more tools in this fight. I think the wrestling is going to be huge. For that reason, I'm going to take Guram as the pick. All right. Take the dip out. Time to get serious. We got some good fights coming up. Oh, but first, this is kind of like I've seen a lot of people back and forth on this one. Nathan Fletcher and Loughran. First off, Nathan Fletcher is coming off of breaking my heart when he fought Zigomantis Ramaska, because I was on Zigomantis in that fight, just based off of the Con Offley and Nathan Fletcher fight that I saw on The Ultimate Fighter. I thought Zigomantis, his striking was going to be a little more dynamic, which ultimately I think it is. I think it was. I just think, Nathan had the game plan to go out there and wrestle. Even though he got caught in submissions and he got caught in bad situations against Ramaska, he was willing to push through it. He had more in the gas tank. You could tell his grappling and his wrestling was just on that next level compared to Zigomantis, and he ends up getting the submission win. Now, these two have actually fought, Nathan Fletcher and Loughran. It was when they were amateurs 6-7 years ago, so you can't really, you can watch the fight and see how it played out, and you know what each guy is going to bring to the table, but I think both these guys are way different fighters than they once were. Loughran's been in the UFC, fought Taylor Lapilus, which, that's a tough debut, even though Lapilus just got cut from the UFC for being on a 2-fight win streak with his only loss to Farid Basharat. He's a solid fighter who's very, very technical, almost too technical to where, he doesn't really let his hands go to try to finish people. He's just out there point fighting, and he's very good at it. But, Loughran took a round off him, and, Loughran landed 2 takedowns on Lapilus, who has phenomenal takedown defense. I think Loughran's being a little underrated in this spot. I think people saw Fletcher. This is kind of a buy low on Loughran because he just lost to Jake Hadley, and a sell high on Fletcher, who just beat Zigomantis. So as far as Fletcher going out here and completely dominating with the wrestling, I don't really see it happening. I think in that first fight, Keelan did a good job of defending early on in it, and then Fletcher, as it went on, starting to have success. But I think Loughran probably has gotten a lot better with the takedown defense. I think his boxing is getting sharper. I think he holds more power than Nathan Fletcher on the feet, and I think he's going to be able to throw more volume too. Through his first 3 UFC fights, Keelan has thrown 5.64 significant strikes per minute. That's a pretty high number. He averages 2 takedowns per fight himself. He can wrestle, and he's got 100% takedown defense in the UFC. So, if Fletcher, like I said, doesn't get it going, I do think Loughran's going to start to pull ahead. I think he'll land the more damaging shots. I think he's going to mix in the leg kicks. And even if he gets takedowns of his own, just to keep Fletcher guessing, I think as an underdog or slight underdog, Loughran is probably the play right now. Probably dog or pass, although I do think this is going to be a very close one. I'm going to stick with Keelan, man. I know it's not a popular pick. I see a lot of people high on Fletcher, but I think this is a tough matchup, and I don't think it's going to be the same as the first fight whatsoever. All right. Let's refresh. Next fight, Shauna Bannon versus Pooja Tomar. This is like a fight with 2 girls looking into a mirror of each other. I mean, the way they fought so far in the UFC, at least. You got Shauna Bannon, made her debut against Bruna Brazil, which is a girl with a lot of experience, a girl with decent skills, I think. She's at Fighting Nerds. Bruna has fought higher levels of competition. And, Bannon went out there and definitely lost, but it wasn't like a complete domination. I mean, Bruna had to mix in a few takedowns to kind of steal a round or 2 there at the end. Shauna fought how she always fights. She's she's kind of bouncy. She hops in and out. She likes that karate style. She's going to throw those side kicks to the stomach to try to, gauge the distance, but also, try to wear you down, hit you in the gut, try to get you tired. And then, she fights Alice Ardeline, gets taken down a couple of times, but outstrikes her, gets a split decision win. I thought the fight could have gone either way. But for Pooja has that kind of same style. She's not as, bouncy. She's more stationary, but she does have that karate style. She's standing sideways. She's looking to land that push kick over and over, and then she's going to come upstairs with the kick. She's got more power in her hands, I believe. She's got a big left hand. And I thought even though it was a split decision win over Rayanne dos Santos, I thought Rayanne looked pretty good in that fight too. And I think Rayanne, even though she's 0-3, if you count the Contender Series under the UFC level, she's fought in decent competition with opposite skill sets of her. I think she's a very technical fighter. I think if she gets better and as she, gets a little more experience, I think she's going to be fine. High level experience. I think she's going to be fine. So, decent win for Pooja off the bat. I think this fight's going to come down to damage. Who's going to be landing more damage? I do think it's Tomar. But if Bannon, I mean, it looks like if you look at her Instagram, it looks like she's been working on her jiu-jitsu. Maybe that's a route for her to try to get this fight to the ground. I know she's Irish and this fight's in London. I really don't know how much that's going to play in as far as the crowd. This is the third fight on the card. The place might not be jam-packed yet. So I don't know. I'm torn on this. This is a fight I just hate giving a prediction on because it's low-level women's mixed martial arts. It's so unpredictable. I'm going to take the girl who throws more volume in Pulyaev Tomar, who does more damage with her kicks, who does more damage with her hands. But I'm going to take her for the pick, like I said, as an underdog. But I'm also going to expect her to lose a split decision to Shauna Bannon. So, yeah, dog money, split decision. It's probably going to go down that way. Next fight on the card, Christian Leroy Duncan versus Andre Pulyaev. Pulyaev coming off the Contender Series where he looked pretty good. It looks like he has some decent power in his hands. And, you get a guy in Christian Leroy Duncan who had some hype coming into the UFC, and it's kind of calmed down a little bit. But he's another guy, man. They kind of throw into the deep end after just a few fights in the UFC. He fights Armen Petrosian, loses that. Then he gets Dennis Loughran, easy win. Claudio Ribeiro, easy win. And then they throw him to Gregory Rodriguez. I mean, the jump you have to make to fight Claudio Ribeiro to Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez is not fun. But, RoboCop had a good game plan. He mixed in 4 takedowns and fought very well. I do think CLD is very talented with the striking. I think his movement keeps fighters guessing. He's switching stances. He's throwing kicks. He's got some power in his hands. He's got a submission on his record, so it's not like that's out of the realm of possibility for him to land a takedown if he needs to in this fight. He's going to be slightly shorter. His opponent, Pulyaev, 6'4". He's kind of tall and skinnier. Got some good power in his hands. I mean, even though he came in, I believe he was an underdog in that fight on the Contender Series. I'd have to double check, but I remember being more impressed with him than I thought I was going to be on the Contender Series. He fought Liam Anderson, a guy who was, I believe, was 8-1 at the time, and had a little, hype behind him as well, getting a little bit of push, trying to get into the UFC. And it was a good fight all the way 15 minutes. Pulyaev did show he has the ability to hurt guys. He's got good power in his hands, but that's kind of the extent of it. I don't think he's as technical as CLD. I don't think he's going to go out there with a wrestling game plan, for sure not. And whereas CLD, I think the movement is going to be a little more high level than Pulyaev's ever seen. I think the power is going to be on the side of CLD. And, using those kicks to keep the range. And if he does get in trouble, kind of having that clinch and takedown game to fall back on. I just think CLD is going to be a little bit too good, a little bit too technical, accurate, all of that for a guy like Pulyaev. But, Pulyaev is a guy that does hold the power in his hands to kind of change a fight. So you never know. CLD, is kind of, I think he was like plus 110 against RoboCop, or maybe even like closer to even money. And that fight just wasn't even close. He just wasn't on that level yet. So maybe this is a good bounce back spot for him. The UFC trying to get him a win. He's in front of his home crowd. He's going to be pumped up to fight. But this guy's got to let the hands go, man. And against a guy in Pulyaev who hasn't experienced all this UFC stuff yet, this is the perfect opportunity to do so. So he's really got to get it going in there. I think he will. For those reasons, I'm taking CLD. I'm actually looking at a play in this fight. I want to see what CLD by finish is. I'll look it up after the show. I don't want to waste a bunch of time going through stuff. But I do think there's paths to victory for him, either on the ground with ground and pounder submission, or even just catching him on the feet. If Pulyaev gets tired, I think the big power shots are going to open up, start to hurt him, and we'll see what happens from there. So, yeah, the pick's going to be a CLD. I'm going to be looking at that inside the distance type of prop. All right, heavyweights. Everybody's favorite heavyweights. Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. This is another fight that everybody's split on online, it seems like. You got a lot of Mick Parkin love. You got a lot of Marcin Tybura love because of the experience and high levels of competition he's been fighting. I was kind of torn on it at the beginning because Tybura, being 38 or 39 years old, his time is coming to an end. He's kind of been up and down. He looked great in some fights where, against Jonata Deniz. Deniz had a lot of hype behind him, has a ton of power in the hands, that kickboxing, and Marcin Tybura was just able to, show that he's the veteran, get it to the second round, and win that fight. Submits Tai Tuivasa, but come on, man. Tai had some great moments in the UFC, but in the last 3 years, the guy, his skill set just seemed non-existent. Beats Blahoy Ivanov, decent win. Alexander Romanov, absolute gas bag. and loses to Volkov, Aspinall, and Sergey Spivak. So, like I said, all around, his wins are decent. His losses are against very high-level guys. The concern, though, man, getting submitted by Sergey Spivak by triangle off your back, armbar, when you're on top of Spivak, like, that's concerning at heavyweight. You never see arm bars from the bottom on heavyweight. Do I think he's going to do that to Mick Parkin? I really don't. I think Mick Parkin, for a big guy and looks like he's out of shape, he moves somewhat, well. His hand speed is very good. He's somewhat athletic. I don't think he's getting caught in those kind of submissions, or I don't think he's going to look to pull him off either. But for Parkin, man, the name of the game here is just to keep it on the feet and just keep doing what you're doing like he's done in every single fight so far. Just box with these guys. His hands are good. He's very technical. It's not like he has a ton of power in his hands. I mean, he knocked out Lucas Dresky. That's pretty impressive considering Dresky, usually gets finished if he's exhausted or, fighting, more skilled guys like Kennedy and Zechiku. But I just think in this spot, man, at some point, Tybura is going to get hurt. We see Marcin go out there every single fight and get hurt. It's not that he's a bad striker, but I do think he's a bit slower at this point in his career. And I don't think he really has the power to change around or to turn the fight around, hurt his opponent, and absolutely zap his opponent of energy, just doing damage. I really don't think that's Marcin Tybura at this point. I think where Tybura needs to get this fight is to the ground with the wrestling. From there, he's going to be better than Parkin. I think Parkin will have the ability to try to work back up, but I think it's definitely Marcin Tybura who can do damage if he's on top. While it's at range on the feet, I don't think he has much success. I do think he's going to get hit. Like I said, not that Parkin has big power, but Tybura, it's not really taken a whole lot lately to hurt him on the feet, and it seems like it happens very often. So I'm going to take Mick Parkin to use that big body to keep this fight standing, use the strength, keep it standing. Hand speed should be good. He should land more volume, and I'll take him to get the win here over Marcin Tybura. I just don't like the age. I don't like how much he's been getting hurt, so those are my reasons for the Parkin pick. So moving on, we're going to get into some good fights. This might be my top fight of the week that I'm most excited to see what happens. Loughran Kavanagh taking on Felipe dos Santos. Felipe dos Santos, I'll start on his side. I was super, as was everybody, super impressed with him when he came in against Manel Kape. Since then, Victor Altamirano win where he landed 37 significant strikes and got taken down 9 times. Not so impressed. Andre Lima, I'll give him a pass on that fight. But you look at the loss, man. He outstruck Andre Lima 38-18, but he was taken down twice. He got put in really bad situations where Andre Lima was threatening with rear naked chokes and having him flattened out and everything. But Felipe dos Santos looked good in the first round, and his striking has always looked good. It's just he seems like he's fighting a little too tentative as of late. We saw it against Victor Altamirano. He's worried about the takedown. He doesn't let his hands go. Andre Lima, late in the fight, he's getting taken down, and when he's not, he's worried about letting his hands go. When he fought Manel Kape, he went out there and just did not care what the result of the fight was. He was going to stand his ground and throw with Manel Kape, and he looked phenomenal. I mean, those strikes were very close. He landed 100 significant strikes on Manel, had him kind of wobbled a few times, and was really Manel Kape outside of Muhammad, whatever his name. Oh, God. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. He's one of the most popular fighters. Muhammad Mokaev. That was maybe Manel Kape's toughest fight since 2021. And Manel's last 7 or 8 fights. So I think this guy's super talented. He's just gotta get going, gotta let the hands go, and just fight the way he did in his debut. Because Loughran Kavanagh is extremely talented. He's extremely technical, has power in the hands. And I think he's got a good grappling game as well. We haven't really seen it at this level. He hasn't had to show it. He went on the Contender Series and got the early knockout over Antoine Ho. And he went in against Jose Ochoa and just boxed him up for 3 rounds. He landed the more meaningful shots, good leg kicks. Ultimately, I thought he showed that he is very, very high level with the striking. So if this fight with Felipe dos Santos plays out on the feet, I think it's closer than what this line is saying, but I do think Kavanagh is going to be a little bit more technical and is probably going to land more often. But, if this fight is tight, I can see Kavanagh mixing in a few takedowns here. I think he's very athletic, and I think we've seen the striking, but he does have a little bit of a wrestling game. He's got a good ground game, and I think he could put it to use in this fight to kind of pull away and steal some of these rounds. I don't really see either of these guys finishing the other. I think they're very tough. We've seen Loughran hurt a few times on the regional scene, but I do think he's got a tough chin. He bounces back after he does get hurt very, very well. I like to see that. It means that he's hit adversity. He's been through a lot in certain fights that have prepared him to be a UFC level fighter. And same thing with Dos Santos. He's fought high levels of competition. He's gone toe-to-toe with guys like Manel Kape. This should be a very, very evenly matched fight in my opinion. It's just, I think at some point Kavanagh can mix in the wrestling a bit, mix in the grappling, and is going to throw a little bit more volume to the point where he's going to start pulling away in the middle of these rounds or towards the end to kind of get the judges to sway it into his favor. So I'm taking Loughran Kavanagh for the pick, but don't sleep on Dos Santos, man. He has the ability to make this fight pretty close. If you can find a spread bet on him, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, even though, there is a chance if anybody gets finished in this fight. I think Loughran probably holds a little bit more power, but I do think a spread bet on Felipe Dos Santos isn't bad. Yeah, plus 3.5 is minus 110. All you need is Dos Santos to win one round on the scorecards. He can still lose, and your bet's going to cash. But if you're on Dos Santos, I think that's the side you play right there. But I do think Loughran probably going to win at least 2 rounds here. Love both guys, though. I'm super excited for that fight. Probably one of my favorites. And I got to mention, Loughran is, I think he's half Chinese, half something else, but London or England has been his home. He's going to be fighting in front of a lot of people he knows. Crowd's going to be on his side, so that might play an advantage too. Now, Jai Herbert versus Chris War Taco Padilla. This is another one, man. Everybody split down, not even split down the middle. I'd actually say that Padilla is like the underdog of the week for the MMA betting community, or at least everybody that puts out content. And I do like Padilla as a fighter, man. He came into the UFC on short notice against James Hamas Yantop, and everybody knows the story with him. He's got an iron jaw. He's indestructible on the feet. You can't knock him out. But Padilla was able to go out there in the first round, take his back, and get a submission. He landed 3 takedowns. Padilla was like plus 270, plus 280 against Yantop in that spot, coming off the couch, and went on there and beat him. And then he goes in against Rong Zhu. Rong Zhu's the guy who just put in work against Cody Steele at a UFC 312, and got that big win. And Padilla was kind of losing that fight, I thought. Or at least it looked so. I mean, the stats won't tell you that, but, visuals, he was getting his leg kicked off. Rong Zhu was the one marching forward, and Padilla was kind of trying to counter and everything. And he did counter with a big elbow and completely shut the eye of Rong Zhu, and the refs had to call the doctor in, and they stopped the fight. So he was another decent-sized underdog in that spot, and now all of a sudden he comes in, and he's even money against the guy in Jai Herbert, who has significantly more high-level experience than Chris Padilla. He's going to be taller. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. I mean, Jai Herbert, just look at his resume. He comes into the UFC and he fights Francisco Trinaldo. Now, Trinaldo was older at the time. He's retired, but Trinaldo was a beast, man. He would go out there and throw hands with anybody, and Jai Herbert's probably winning that fight, and he gets knocked out in the third by a big left hand. His next fight, Renato Moicano, and he gets taken down multiple times in that spot and gets submitted. But after that, he goes out and he knocks out Kama Worthy. He gets knocked out by Ilia Topuria, another guy. I mean, these are guys outside of Trinaldo. That's Moicano, who just fought for the belt against Islam. That's Ilia Topuria, who just knocked out Volk and Max Holloway and was the champ at 145 until he vacated. Then Jai beats Kyle Nelson, gets a draw against Ludovic Klein, which is a fight that he won, but he got a point deduction, so it ended up becoming a draw. He won that fight 29-28 without the technicalities. Loses to Fares Ziam. Ziam's on a 5 or 6 fight win streak, and then he beats Rolando Bedoya easily with 2 takedowns of his own and 82 significant strikes. Knocked down Bedoya, who has a good chin. So yeah, man, high-level losses, good wins, very, very good striker. He's tall, he's long. Doesn't throw the most volume in the world, but if you stand at range with him, he will. A lot of these fights, he's not getting off a lot of volume. These guys are mixing in takedowns. I mean, look at Ludovic Klein. Fares Ziam was trying to mix in takedowns. Ilia Topuria had to mix in one. He actually dropped Ilia Topuria and had him dead to rights. Like, it was bad. Like, that's the high-level type of striker that he is. And, Chris, it's not that Chris isn't a good striker because he's very scrappy, but if this is going to be a technical kickboxing match, this is Jai Herbert all day long. Just got to watch out for the big right hand, the big elbows. But like I said, Jai's got a good reach advantage, and he fights very well at distance, and he knows how to manage that distance. I think it's going to play huge. Chris has got to come out here and get the takedowns, but I do think Jai, his takedown defense and his grappling game has gotten better as his career has gone on. And I do think he's going to be able to stuff a lot of takedowns against Chris Padilla. And even if he does get taken down, he's very active off of his back. He'll look for submissions. If they're not there, he's going to work to get back to his feet. Once he gets back to his feet, you're back at striking range where he's going to probably start winning the fight, more and more often. So everybody is taking Chris Padilla as an underdog this week. I'm going to go Jai Herbert, man. I think this is going to be like parlay buster, underdog buster of the week. And you got to put some respect on the black country banger in Jai Herbert fighting in front of his home crowd. He's training partners with Leon Edwards. Those guys are both on the card. They have a lot of motivation. Chris Padilla is locked in. He's got tons of motivation. He's hungry too. But this is an absolute veteran. Chris Padilla is yet to fight a veteran in the UFC. And this is one who knows how to fight and knows how to win fights too. I'm taking Jai Herbert for the, even though he's a slight favorite, I'm taking him for the upset this week because everybody is on Chris Padilla. I don't like that. I don't like that whatsoever. All right, Nathaniel Wood, Morgan Charriere. Charriere is very, very talented. Came into the UFC. Everybody knew he was talented. That's what everybody was talking about is the guy has power. He can grapple. Very, very good kicks. We saw him end his first fight in the UFC via kicks in the first round against Manalo Zucchini. And, after that has a very, very close fight. Split decision loss to Chepe Mariscal. I thought that was a right call. Chepe outlanded him 71-50. Took him down once. Morgan had a couple of takedowns and a submission attempt. But Chepe was the one who was way busier. Chepe had better cardio in that spot. I thought he did everything right. And then Morgan goes out there and beats Gabriel Miranda by round 2 KO in his next fight. But Nathaniel Wood, this is another fight that reminds me of the last one we just talked about. You got a guy in Wood who's very talented on the striking. He throws good volume. He's got good cardio. He's actually got some good wrestling and grappling as well. But he's a guy who has a ton of high-level experience in the UFC. I mean, loads and loads more experience than Morgan Charriere at this level. Yeah, he's got wins over Charles Rosa, Charles Jourdain, Andre Fili, and Daniel Pineda are his last wins. But before that, he's he's fought decent guys in there between. I mean, Casey Kinney had some good moments in his fight career at this level. He fought Song Yadong. He fought Dominic Cruz. I mean, he was on a little bit of a roll, capping it off with that Nathaniel Wood win. And that's good experience right there, if you ask me. I mean, compared to who Morgan's fought outside of Chepe, I think Nathaniel Wood has kind of morphed and evolved his game as his career has gone on, just because of how active he's been. He's been in the UFC since 2018. He's fought in a couple, 2-3 times a year since then. I mean, Daniel Pineda, tough guy, hits hard, and has been in the UFC or the PFL or just MMA as a whole forever. So this is hard to take the underdog here. This would be hard for me to take the favorite in Charriere here just based off of all of that. I mean, Charriere, what's he do well? He's good striker with kicks, but does seem to get a little bit tired, especially if he can't get his wrestling going and hold his opponents down. I really don't see him holding Nathaniel Wood down. Nathaniel Wood is wiry, he's scrappy, and he's fast, and will get back up to his feet. So if you're in a kickboxing match with Nathaniel Wood, I mean, Charriere maybe lands the bigger shots, but Nathaniel Wood's going to stay in your face, chew up that front leg. He's going to throw combinations. He's going to be outlanding you a lot more than you are him. And at the end of the day, if Morgan does have to resort to the wrestling, I think he's the one that gets tired in this spot. And I think Wood, 72% takedown defense, has fought some good wrestlers and should have the better cardio here. So if Nathaniel can just go out there and win round 1 and do a little bit of damage and force Morgan's hand to that wrestling, I think it's going to, really, really, you're going to see these odds jump in Nathaniel Wood's favor, because I expect Wood to win round 3 here at a pretty decently high clip. So as the underdog, man, I'm going to take him for the shot. He's fighting at home as well. Morgan Charriere is too. This is going to be a battle of the hometown. No, sorry, Charriere's French, isn't he? I don't know why I was thinking he was fighting out. Maybe he's fighting out of London. I'm not sure exactly on Charriere, but I am going to take the dog. I like that he's fighting in front of his home crowd. If Charriere is too, I mean, it's not where he's born and raised at least. Give me the dog, man. Give me the volume. Give me the experience. Everything's pointing towards Nathaniel Wood in this spot. I think you can still get a pretty decent number on him. It's not an underdog. Like I said, I'm not extremely confident in this one whatsoever because Charriere does have that fight-changing power, especially if he gets his kicks going. But I just think Wood is going to be way more technical in this spot. I'm going to see what the odds are for you real quick, what they are as of now, not when I made these graphics. And yeah, Charriere sitting at minus 155, Wood plus 130. It's such a close fight, man. I don't know if I'm willing to take that plus 130 on Wood yet. If he got to like plus 160, plus 170, I think I'm hammering that all day long. I wonder what he opened up as. But yeah, I'm going to lean dog for the pick here. Dog or pass for me. Such a weird fight too. Like not a weird fight that I don't know why they would make it. It's just there's so many different scenarios going on in this one. It makes it hard to really pin down a confident pick. All right, Jordan Vucenic taking on Chris Duncan. Jordan is a massive favorite in this spot over Chris Duncan. And Chris Duncan, outside of the Manuel Torres fight, this dude just pulls wins out of his hat. Seems like, at least. I mean, against Blachowicz, he's kind of getting pieced up on the feet. He got taken down twice, and he wraps up this guillotine, and it looks like Blachowicz's head is about to come out. But, you know, Oki's blood supply, airflow had been cut off for a little bit too long. And Chris Duncan's like, man, I think he's out. So he lets go of the choke. And Oki is just sitting there on all fours with his head up, but he's not moving. Like he's just frozen, trying to come back too. So, you know, the ref has to stop the fight there. Chris Duncan gets the submission win. We saw it against Charlie Campbell, man, on the Contender Series. One of the craziest moments on the Contender Series where Charlie Campbell drops him, not even drops him, but just wobbles him badly, has him basically one more big shot away from completely ending the fight, and Chris Duncan just lands a bomb and puts him out cold for the knockout win. Other than that, I mean, Chris Duncan's fighting Yanal Ashmouz, outlands him, you know, significantly and lands a few takedowns. I think in this spot, man, Vucenic is definitely going to be faster with the hands. I do like the power on the side of Chris Duncan. And, you know, even if you want to go and try to grapple Chris Duncan, it's not like it's a guarantee that you're going to have success. Like I said, he did get taken down by Blachowicz twice, but he held on to that guillotine, showed that he's very well versed with the jiu-jitsu, and he can pull off wins like that. But Vucenic, I think he was expected to get into the UFC a little bit earlier than he did. I think this is the guy that people, you know, in Cage Warriors and overseas have been talking about for a long time. They understand his skill set. And even though he lost to Guram Kudasladze in his debut, that was a very, very close fight. That was a hard-fought fight. He even dropped Guram in that fight, showing that he's got power in his hands. But if you go back and watch this guy has sick jiu-jitsu and grappling as well. So coming in here against Duncan, as long as he doesn't get clipped with something big from Duncan, I think he's going to have the speed advantage, and he's going to throw more volume while this thing's on the feet. And, you know, on the ground, as far as the wrestling goes, Duncan might be a better pure wrestler, but I think Vucenic is going to have better jiu-jitsu. I don't think you're going to catch Vucenic in a guillotine like you did Blachowicz. The difference in jiu-jitsu from Vucenic and Oki is miles and miles apart. I hate these odds, but I do think Jordan Vucenic is probably going to have the ability to hurt him on the feet. But not only that, I think he's going to have the ability to sub him if the fight goes to the ground or if Duncan starts shooting these desperation takedowns, kind of like he did against Manuel Torres. You know, sharp money might be on Chris Duncan at these big odds, and I would not blame anybody for playing him around this plus 350, plus 360 number. I think that's extremely wide, but I do think Vucenic probably does get it done here, and Chris Duncan's just going to look like that side that's the loser, even though there's a ton of value on a big number like that against the guy who is somewhat new to the UFC, and Chris Duncan being that he's got wins in the UFC. That's kind of what concerns me about this line and makes me think there's value there. But I really do like the skill set of Jordan Vucenic, so he's going to be the pick. Be careful parlaying him, though. I wouldn't be putting any more -470s in your parlays after we've seen what happens in the last few weeks. All right, next fight. Molly McCann, Alexia Thainara. I was a little surprised to see this line, seeing Alexia Thainara closing in on -200 through the week. Now she's at -205 on the live odds right now. Molly McCann plus 170. She's been teetering around that plus 150 mark all week. I get it because Alexia Thainara's main skill set. She's going to want to get the fight to the ground, and she's going to look for submissions. She's very good with them too. We've seen her submitted though as well, but the big hole in Molly's game has been the ground, the jiu-jitsu. Saw her get submitted by Erin Blanchfield. Looking back, honestly, Blanchfield is a beast. She's a very, very high-level grappler. Can't really fault her for that. But, getting submitted by Yulia Stoliarenko, it seems like a bad loss because Yulia's been beat so many times. But, that's Yulia's path to victory in every single fight. She's submission or bust. If she doesn't find the sub, she's not winning usually. But, there's always a chance she could submit anybody because it's that good. But, I look at Molly against Diana Belbita. She won the exchanges on the feet, had way more power, was way faster with the striking, dropped down a weight class for it, gets 2 takedowns of her own and finds the armbar, showing that she's been working on her game. I think she's a recently promoted brown belt in jiu-jitsu, has somewhat of a ground game now. Maybe she's been working on it so hard that she has a little bit better of an understanding out of how to stay safe against some of these submission attacks against her. So, yeah, I think, Alexia, her path to victory, kind of her only path to victory is takedowns, submission attempts, and you're going to base that on a minus 200 when you're making your debut in London in front of Molly's crowd here. That's a tough ask for me. I'm not paying minus 200 on Alexia Thainara making her debut. That's for sure. Like, even, she went to a decision on the Contender Series against Rose Canseco, who is a good fighter for sure. But, Alexia didn't completely blow me away in that spot that made me think she should be a minus 200 over a girl who has tons of UFC experience, who's a big name in the UFC. Did not give me that vibe that she should be that big of a favorite whatsoever. Now, for Molly, stuff the takedowns. If this fight's on the feet, I think Molly is faster with her striking. I watch Alexia and I see her striking. She's always got her chin up and leaned way back. Like, I think Molly can find the chin. Maybe not put her out, but she's going to have big moments if it stays standing. I think she'll mix in the leg kicks. She's going to throw those spinning elbows that she's knocked out a fair share amount of opponents with. And I just think she's going to have way more volume too. Alexia might get overwhelmed here on the feet. If she can't get the takedowns, I think she's for sure going to get overwhelmed on the feet. And you mix in that with the debut nerves, the jitters, having the whole entire crowd yelling against you. Maybe she's the type of fighter that feeds off that and it serves her well. But, fighting a girl like Molly, who's probably going to be a little intimidating as it is because of the name and what she's done in the UFC and some moments that she's had, mix that in with being in London, UFC debut, I don't like it whatsoever, man. I'm going to take Molly McCann. If she loses, this is the last time I'm ever taking her in a fight. I'll pick her to win. I'm not betting on her, but I'll tell you a bet that I do like, and I already put it out on my TikTok and Instagram and YouTube shorts here. I like this fight to end inside the distance, and I'll tell you why exactly. It's plus 160. What? You're going to pay minus 200 on a fight to go to a decision between a girl whose last 4 of 5 fights have ended inside the distance for Molly, and Alexia, 3 of her last 5 have ended inside the distance. These girls have opposite skill sets. You got Alexia, submission. Could she sub Molly? Absolutely. She gets the fight to the ground, Molly could be in trouble. If she doesn't get the fight to the ground, though, she's going to get pieced up, I think. I think she's going to eat some bombs. I think she could gas, be in what situation it is. And there's going to be a chance Molly could end it with that too. And even if Alexia does get tired, start shooting sloppy takedowns, I think Molly could jump on the neck, could jump on something at some point too if Alexia is tired and shooting those desperation takedowns. So I think there's so many different scenarios on how this fight could end that plus 160, I think that line is off. I've already played it for a unit, gave it out. So yeah, that's kind of the pick for me is this fight not to go the distance at plus 160. If I have to take a pick on who I think should win, I'm going to go with the girl with more experience in front of her home crowd against the debuter. I'm taking Molly McCann. Oh, man, I'm excited for that one, too. I know not many people are raving about it, but I think it's going to be a fun one. Next up, feature fight of the night. Gunnar Nelson, Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland already back, man. It seems like he fights every other month, which he basically has in his UFC career. 2-fight losing streak for Holland. Got submitted by Renier de Ritter. Before that, lost to Roman Dolidze. In the first round, it was technically an injury, but he was getting dominated, man. He got taken down. He got put in a mount and was eating some big elbows. and his rib pops as he's trying to roll out of it. So good on Roman there. I don't think that's a fluke win. I think Roman put him in that situation, and that's just what happened. But, I mean, everybody knows the story with Kevin, man. Kevin's got good striking. He's long, he's big, especially for 170. He's very, very long, super athletic, super explosive, has power, has landed knockouts against good opponents. I mean, you look at Santiago Ponzinibbio, knocks him out. Alex Cowboy Oliveira, Jacare Souza, where he did it from his back, which was one of the most insane knockouts that we've seen. We always see the highlights. Knocked out Joaquin Buckley. I mean, Kevin Holland, when he puts it together and he can keep fights on the feet, if it's not a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Kevin's having a lot of success. I mean, split decision against Jack Della Matt Atlanta outlanded him. Michael Venom Page, I'll say this. Venom Page has been such a mystery for these guys to figure out. Besides Ian Gary, who had to backpack him. But, I mean, you watch what he did against Charriere. Charriere had no answer for anything. I mean, Kevin probably, between those two, I mean, he put up a pretty good fight against MVP. You watch MVP and Bellator, 95% of those guys could not touch him. I mean, Kevin landed almost 30 significant strikes in that fight, landed 2 takedowns. You know, Kevin is going to sit there and fight with you for 15 minutes regardless of what happens. You got to submit him or he's going to be in your face throwing. I kind of like that here against Gunny Nelson. Gunnar Nelson is a guy you see pop up once a year on these London cards. He's not super active, which tells me he's not really training super hard to be world champion, and he's not, he's got other obligations. He's coaching, stuff like that. He's probably always in the gym, but probably not, training for the fight of his life or anything like that. His last 2 fights, Brian Barberena, it was his retirement fight. Brian has no ground game whatsoever, kind of like Kevin, but he's not near as athletic as Kevin, and it's easier to take down Brian Barberena than it is Kevin. So easy win for Gunnar Nelson there by submission. Before that, fought Takashi Sato, where Sato had some decent moments in like the first couple of minutes of the fight, and then Gunnar Nelson landed 3 takedowns the rest of the fight and just held him down the whole entire time. Didn't even really look for that many submissions, just kind of peppered him with shots while he had his back, and that's basically it. I mean, before that, he's losing to Gilbert Burns in 2019. That's a savage Gilbert Burns. Loses to Leon Edwards, beats Cowboy Oliveira, loses to Santiago Ponzinibbio. So, he's only had 4 fights in the last 6 years, and that's how inactive he's been. He's also flirting the idea with retirement out there. So, yeah, if Kevin Holland's going to beat a guy in this division who has good submission skills, I think it's a guy like Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar's not going to have as dominant wrestling and grappling as Ranier de Ritter. He's not going to, have the strength and physicality as a Roman Dolidze. And while it's on the feet, Gunnar has that weird karate style where he's standing sideways. Kevin does too, and if they square off and Gunnar maybe he's like, I'm going to put on a show for my last fight in front of my home crowd or all these people that traveled here to see me, I'm going to take Kevin Holland, man. I'm not really convinced that Gunnar's even going to be able to get the fight to the ground in the first place. And if it's staying on the feet, I'm taking Kevin Holland. That's all there is to it. Kevin losing 2 fights the way he has, first round finishes both of them, he's got to be motivated to come out here and just absolutely spark somebody. And I won't be surprised if this is when it happens. I think this is a better Kevin Holland, maybe a little more focused, knowing that he needs to get a win or his job is going to be on the line. So, yeah, I'm rocking with the Trailblazer. Not going to be a popular pick, I'd say. I mean, maybe some people are throwing some money at him, but this is one where I'm picking Kevin Holland, but if he does go out there and get submitted, I look like an absolute idiot because that's how he should lose if he loses this fight. It's happened so many times lately, it feels like, and you're getting another grappler. It's like, why would you take Kevin Holland against another grappler? We've seen this story 100 times in the last year. I'm just doing it, man. I'm taking the striker. I'm taking Kevin Holland. And plus money, I mean, I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I haven't played him yet, but I'm really close to pulling the trigger. So, yeah. Give me the Trailblazer. Let's go. Co-main event time. Jan Blachowicz taking on Carlos Ulberg. And I've seen a lot of love on Jan Blachowicz this weekend. Rightfully so. I mean, the guy has been a staple in this division in the UFC for a long time. His last 2 fights are against the guys who just fought for the title. Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. It was a draw with Magomed Ankalaev, which was a good feature for Jan. I mean, we just saw what Magomed did to Alex. Magomed, before that, has been on such a tear, such a big win streak, and he's definitely probably the best 205er on the planet right now. And, even against Alex, he found 3 takedowns in that fight. He controlled him. He landed some good shots on the feet. He just gassed out, and that's my big concern heading into this fight too. Like, even if he does land takedowns early, I don't think he's got the gas anymore to hold guys down, to submit them really against younger, bigger, athletic guys like an Alex Pereira, who's not younger, but like a Carlos Ulberg, who's got that similar build, explosiveness, and Carlos is going to be younger. So Jan is 42 years old. I think his time's coming to an end, which is sad because he always puts on fun fights. But for Ulberg, man, he is so good at keeping the distance and keeping his range and using his kicks well and beating up that lead leg, which, can happen here against Jan for sure. So if Jan can't get close enough to him to land these takedowns and he wants to play some kickboxing game with them, he's going to have to go like full-on leg kicks to try to hurt Carlos Ulberg the way he did to Magomed Ankalaev. Because if Jan tries to exchange in the hands with the hands against Carlos, he's going to get caught at some point, I'm afraid. I mean, he's going to be way slower. Footwork's not going to be as good as Ulberg. Ulberg's footwork is very good. He circles around the outside very well, and he has that kind of sniper game with the hands, but he's going to mix in kicks too, and I just don't think that Jan at 42 is going to be able to keep up there. Now, if Jan can go out there and wrestle the first 2 rounds and does have a lot of success, maybe that underdog ticket starts to look good. I just really don't have the faith that he's going to be able to do so. I mean, Carlos Ulberg holds an 83% takedown defense. Alex Pereira, when he fought Jan Blachowicz, takedown defense was kind of non-existent, was not that good. And, even Jan got tired trying to hold down Alex. So if he does have a wrestling-heavy game plan here, I do think he's going to gas out here too. He's just older, man. I love Jan Blachowicz, but being older, coming off big injuries like that, now you're getting a guy who's going to kick your leg off. He's going to try to punch your head into the third row and has fast and good hands, all-around phenomenal striker. I just don't think the value is quite there on the underdog like a lot of people are seeing. So I'm going with the young guy. Give me Carlos Ulberg. I do think he gets it done. I don't know if he finishes Jan. Jan is very tough, but I do think Ulberg's going to do enough to at least get the decision. All right, main event time, Leon Rocky Edwards versus Sean Brady. I've seen so much love out there for Sean Brady lately for this fight, and I do think, there's so much recency bias in this sport, and people forget really, really fast about how skilled certain fighters are just because they take a loss or two. I mean, Leon took a loss to Belal Muhammad. Belal is beating everybody right now, including Sean Brady. I mean, if you look at Belal's entire UFC career since 2016, basically 10 years now, he's fought a ton of times, tons and tons of wins. He's got 2 knockout wins. One was against Augusto Montano back in 2016, in round 3, where the guy got tired and he finished him. His other one was Sean Brady. Belal went out there and beat Sean Brady by TKO in the second round, where Belal put up 80 significant strikes through basically 9 minutes. So that was impressive from Belal. Kind of showed the deficiency still in Sean Brady's striking. Not that he's a bad striker, but to go out there and get beat up like that against a grappler basically in Belal, who's formed some really good striking. I mean, that fight wasn't that long ago. You're looking at 2.5 years ago. Sean's only fought twice since then. One was against Gilbert Burns, who everybody knows is right there teetering at the end of his career. It's not the same Gilbert Burns from 2020 or 2019. Like, it was a slower Burns, a hesitant Burns. And Sean Brady, even though he went out there and fought beautifully and won that fight easily, it just doesn't feel the same. And his other one was Kevin Gastelum, who Kevin was dropping down a weight class for the first time in a long, long time. Talked about, I believe he missed weight. He might have missed weight for that. But just talked about how he felt like shit in that fight. The fight went almost all 3 rounds. Sean Brady got the submission right there at the very end. Sean landed 5 takedowns, but 14 significant strikes in that spot. I mean, you got to, against a guy like Gastelum, if you're taking him down that many times, do some work, man. Do some ground and pound. I know he was going for a lot of submissions and stuff, but I want to see more damage out of Sean Brady because, he goes out there against Michael Chiesa, had to just implement the wrestling and hang on. He landed 18 significant strikes against Michael Chiesa. And that was right before the Belal Muhammad loss. I mean, Michael's a guy that you take him down, you should be able to tee off on him like a lot of people do. Oh, he's gotten some good submissions against like Jake Matthews and Christian Aguilera, but outside of that, man, he's not really his highest level wins. Definitely Bilal, or fights. Definitely Bilal. Definitely Gilbert. Everybody else, though, I'm just not super impressed with on Sean Brady's record, and how quickly they forget that Leon Edwards, who just lost to Bilal, but before that was on a how many fight? 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fight unbeaten streak. He had one no contest in there against Bilal from the eye poke. But I mean, look at who he's beating, man. Colby Covington. Colby didn't look the same. I'll give him that. But Kamaru Usman, Nate Diaz, RDA, Gunnar Nelson, Cowboy Cerrone. I mean, this guy, Vicente Luque, I mean, this guy has beat some of the greatest. I'll say maybe the greatest, one of the greatest in Kamaru Usman, beat him twice. One was a Hail Mary buzzer beater. The other one, he just flat out beat over the course of 5 rounds in London. So, I mean, this guy, higher level experience, has that game to where if, Sean can't get the takedowns going, I think he gets picked apart on the feet. I really do. Leon is way better of a striker than he showed against Bilal Muhammad. And I think his takedown defense is way better than he showed there too. I mean, Colby took Leon down for a couple of times, but he was able to pop back up. Kamaru Usman took down Leon. Kamaru is one of the best wrestlers in the division that the division has ever seen. Leon in that second fight was able to pop back up. Leon took Nate Diaz down 4 times, so he took RDA down 3 times. So I mean, this guy is not a slouch in the wrestling department. Hell, he took down Kamaru Usman for the only time Kamaru had been taken down up until that point in his career. Leon took him down. So Leon's not a slouch in the wrestling. He's not a slouch with the jiu-jitsu and the grappling either. And I think his takedown defense at 65% is a pretty good number considering how many rounds he's been with Kamaru Usman. Fought RDA, Gunnar Nelson, some other wrestlers too in there. So I don't think this is going to be – I don't think Sean Brady covers this minus 170 line that he's sitting at. I think if anything, if Sean Brady wins, this is down to the wire, split decision, super, super close type of fight. I don't think he's subbing him. Leon's never been finished. So, I mean, if it goes to a decision, do you think the London judges – I know it's probably American judges, but do you think the judges in London are really going to side that heavily with Sean Brady in a razor-close fight? I don't really. I mean – maybe. We saw it against Islam and Volkanovski in Australia in their first fight. But I just think that Leon is going to do more damage here. I think he's kind of got his back up against the wall. He's probably embarrassed from that fight with Bilal. I think he comes out here with something to prove, and he actually lets the hands go. That's been his problem against Bilal. And, if he does let his hands go, Leon Edwards is still one of the best fighters in the world. He's one of the top guys in this division and is definitely in the title conversation and is at that level if he just lets his hands go, lets his hands and his kicks go. So I'm going to take Leon Edwards for the pick here. I like Sean Brady. I think he's got a bright future, but he's just got, none of his wins have been that impressive, at least. Gilbert Burns is a great win. I mentioned it, man. He's older. Kevin Gastelum was moving down a weight class and had an awful weight cut, as he said afterwards. Didn't really land much volume in that spot. So I'm going to go with Leon. I think he does get it done. And also to mention, Sean is coming over here into London. That's a long flight. Enemy territory, all that stuff too. So yeah, I'm taking the underdog in Leon Edwards. Shout out to the sponsor of this show, BetUS. If you guys are looking for a sports book you can use in 49 of the 50 states, BetUS is going to be available. It's going to be linked in my bio. Shoot me a DM. I'll send you a link. I'll get you a promo for your first 3 deposits matched up to 150%. Again, you can use this sportsbook in 49 of the 50 states. It's going to be linked below. If you want to bet on the UFC or any sport for that matter, BetUS is most likely going to be available to you. Now, if you want to get all of my bets for UFC London completely free, I'm going to drop it in the link as well. But all you got to do is go to Winible.com/HOFpicks and use code London, which gets you a 5-day free trial. You're going to get all my bets, all of Hey Jive picks bets, and we are sizzling hot on the last card. And for Hey Jive, the last 2 to 3 cards, the guy's up over 20 units already on the year. Just absolute phenomenal stuff. Seeing the board really well. If you want to get in on that, guys, again, I'm going to have it linked below. Don't miss out. It's completely free with the free trial. At the end of the trial, if you don't like what you see or you don't want to be a member anymore, you're free to cancel without charge. You won't be charged for anything. So yeah, let's get on it, guys. We will see you next week for next week's card, but I'm super pumped for this weekend. If you're betting on the card, if you're picking predictions, picking winners for this thing, good luck. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.